Hello and welcome to Unleashed. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm so excited to be here today with Pam Fox Rollin, who is the co-author of Growing Groups into Teams, real life stories of people who get results and thrive together. Pam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Will. I'm really happy to be on.
So, Pam, first of all, let's start with definitions. What is a team?
Oh, I'm so glad you started with that because that's where a lot of the problem lies. We tend to call things teams if they're like a group of people, and certainly a group of people who all report to the same people. Oh, that must be a team. But really, when we look at it, we find there are two things that you have to have for it to be a team and to get the benefits of it being a team. And those are one, a shared promise. What is it we are all committed to accomplish for our customers, whoever they be, whether they're internal to the company or external customers or investors or whoever you've made a promise to? But it has to be a shared promise for it to be a team. That means I'm not just doing my tasks, I'm also committed to the promise. And in a world where things change all the time, whether it's technology or a customer getting acquired or a better way found to do things. When things change, your commitment is still to produce the value for the customer, not just say, hey, I got my task done. Make sense?
Okay, so shared promise. What else?
Second is commitment to coordinate to fulfill that promise. So many teams are actually sort of um, basically contractors who are employed by the company, like they're task doers,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually don't have a commitment to coordinate. And if you've ever been in a meeting, well, where people say, yeah, well, I did my part, you know, you don't have a team.
No. So it sounds like, by your definition, a group of people who, even if they have a shared promise, if they're not coordinating, that's not really a team. So, for example, maybe you have five salespeople, and you'd say that's my sales team. But if they're each independently going and pursuing, I have Pennsylvania, you have New York State, I have the Southeast, and they're not really collaborating, then that's not really a team. That's five individual contributors under the same boss.
To a point, if they're not collaborating at all, true. But if they're putting in data that other people can look at and learn from, if they are giving each other some guidance, sharing product information to help make each other successful, then yeah, you probably have a team.
Okay, so what would some examples be of things that the ordinary person who hasn't read the book might say, yeah, that's a team, but you would say, no, that's actually not really a team? What are some examples of not a team?
So shockingly, Will, most of the executive teams I work with
Mm.
are not a team. In fact, they're often least a team than other levels of the organization.
they're stabbing each other. They're fighting for political power or something. In what way are they not a
Or
team?
just, or they're just trying to like, don't talk to me. Marketing is doing fabulous. But okay, so production isn't, or market or engineering isn't. And there's no way we can succeed in fulfilling the promise of the company, which is, of course, what you would want the executive team to hold together, is the promise that we've made to our customers, investors, employees. And in the best teams that I work with that are actually teams at an executive level, they're all really clear on what that promise is, and they will do what it takes to partner with each other to make that happen.
All right, fantastic. Okay, next topic area would be, let's imagine a Venn diagram of advice about teams or wisdom about teams. Um, and there's the Venn diagram is, there's one circle is what kind of a lot of other people would say about teams, and there's the other circle is what you and Kobe say about teams. So there's something that you, and the conventional wisdom is in the center, right? Like everybody would say this.
Got it.
uh, I first want to explore what are the things that you might find in other articles, other books, other HBR things, and that you disagree with. What is some common wisdom or that you do not agree with about teams?
But you have to like each other as people.
Oh, okay.
It's great when that happens. It's really cool. Um, that you have. So let me just drill down a speck on that because I think it's such a common misperception. All the research going back years and years and years, and I helped refresh the Stanford Business School class on leading diverse organizations and doing a deep dive on the research. Study after study, diverse teams do better than teams that are not diverse. Actually, they hold both ends of the tail. They're some of the worst teams and they're some of the best teams.
Mm.
And so, my question is always, how do you get in the best column? Right. And that's things like a shared promise and a commitment to coordinate. Um, they're worse teams sometimes because if they don't have the conversations they need to have, I think almost all of us who, you know, did group projects as undergrads or in business school or whatever sort of grad school, it was always the worst, right? It's a group project, literally, not a team project. And if you did not get along with them, you didn't have a similar background, and you didn't make an effort to say, hey, this is great. We've got different skills. Let's figure out how to work across that. If you don't make that effort, it's like, oh crap, I don't understand these people. They don't understand me. I'm just going to do my part. Right. And then the whole thing is like B or C. So if you all like each other, that's fabulous. Then you should check and say, hey, are we diverse enough? And if not, whose perspectives are we missing? So if we're all a bunch of engineers coming at this problem and we have nobody who's really close to what it takes for marketing or production, it's not like we have to necessarily bring them on the team, but we need to go do some field trips to get their perspectives.
Hmm. Okay. So the team does not need to like one another, maybe respect and trust, but not necessarily like. And they need to be diverse enough. Let's clarify that a little bit. So diverse in what way? So we don't want necessarily people that are smart and people that are not smart, right? That's not good, right?
Okay,
That's
fair.
diverse,
Fair.
diverse, but it's not very good. We don't want people who are
Although,
great to work
yeah,
with and people who are jerks. Like we don't. That's not the kind of
no,
diversity.
we don't need that.
What
Good
diversity?
point.
What diversity are we looking for?
Yeah. And in fact, the research on teams is that having the smartest people, like when they do research on, for whatever you think of IQ as a measure, um, it actually, beyond a certain point, it doesn't really help at all. And in many cases, it's worse because people who have, especially PhDs and MDs, I love working with them. They're fabulous, but as they will tell you, nothing has prepared them to work in teams. They have been evaluated as solo players. And I do a lot of work in healthcare and a lot of MD PhDs, and they're brilliant and fabulous and often aren't practiced at the moves of leading as a team. Now, sometimes they've worked with really great clinical teams. I'm not saying this is everybody, and they're so smart that with just a little bit of support, they can get there really fast. But the diversity that you're looking for is diversity of thought. And that often comes from having different undergraduate majors, having grown up in different locations and countries and cultures. And also there's cognitive diversity, whether you use Myers-Briggs or some other sort of model. Teams with more cognitive diversity do better. But yeah, we don't need jerks.
All right. So we're not talking necessarily primarily about gender diversity, racial diversity. It's diversity of perspective and skills, and you want to make sure you have sales, marketing, customer service, engineering, whatever, represented different perspectives, people from different countries, perhaps. It's not necessarily what you might hear in a DEI kind of session.
Let me add to that because having diversity of thought also means diversity of the culture in which you grew up in, diversity of how you've been perceived. There's actually a lot of studies that show that on average, women are more perceptive about the power system. People of color are more perceptive about the power system because they've had to be. And sometimes that's really useful. So imagine you're leading a product team and you need to get things done through influence. You want to have people on the team who are perceptive about where are the power structures in your company. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think racial and gender diversity is in there.
Okay. Um, so we talked about the teams don't have to like each other necessarily. We want diverse teams. And are there any other kind of common wisdom about teams that you would say, well, we beg to differ?
I think people get hung up on, you know, is it a two pizza team? Is it four people? Is it eight people? Are they co-located? Oh, obviously that's a really big topic right now.
Hmm.
Can teams succeed hybrid or fully remote? And I have seen that the answer is very much yes, if they have a promise and if they coordinate.
Hmm.
What I'd also say is it means a heck of a lot to remote teams to be able to get together in person from time to time.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the best people I know who lead remote teams they travel themselves to the person's location to go take a walk with them for a day, go meet with them, have some meals, go to clients together, or go visit the local operation together. There's something that just can't be replicated about being together, but it doesn't mean you have to be together 5 or even 3 days a week.
All right. Let's flip it. What are the other part of the Venn diagram? What are some things that you do believe about teams that you won't find in the standard team literature book?
Yeah, so I think the perspective that we bring on responsibility and accountability is quite different. And there are many good thinkers whose shoulders we stand on, and we acknowledge them in the book. So it's not that we invented this out of whole cloth, but responsibility is you taking that promise seriously. So, well, if you're part of a team that's planning an event, you see yourself as responsible for the whole event going well. Okay, what is it that success looks like for this event? Everybody on the team should know that, be able to recite it. And when it changes, if it changes, everybody should be able to say, okay, here's now what success looks like. But let's say you're responsible for the guest speakers. And if you're responsible, then somebody else, maybe who's like food and beverage or logistics, you're like, wait a minute, one of our speakers has an allergy. I need to talk to the food and bev person and then support them with that. Or, you take this broader view because you're responsible for that successful achievement of the event, not just getting the guest speakers. And then accountability is when you make a promise to somebody else to do it. And are you fulfilling promises you've made? And there's often a couple big problems with that in teams that we see. One is that you can't be accountable to a promise you never made. And often people just said, hey, Will, you're in charge of food and bev or guest speakers, go do that, right? And you were never checked in with to say, actually, what's your commitment? What's your promise? What are you willing to do? What does the success look like for you? Okay, that adds up. Oh, hey, that doesn't add up. Could you also consider logistics for the guest speakers? Could you also make sure that you're coordinating well with that? Whatever it is. The other problem with accountability is, my goodness, people are so shy to call other people. I don't want to point out that I don't have a roster yet for guest speakers and it's 2 weeks before the event and it's holding up publicity. But if you really are responsible to the overall success of the event, like I would go to you, Will, and say, Will, I haven't seen the guest speaker list yet. And I'm concerned because we need to get this stuff out. And you might say, oh, yeah, and it's coming and whatever. So we build our plans on your promise to get it to us by this date. What can we do to recover the promise? What can we do? How can we support you to recover the promise so that you're accountable? But when people shy away from those conversations about accountability, then projects fall through and get delayed. And like the number one thing that feels good is success. And most people are willing to have feedback and hard conversations if at the end of it, the team is successful.
I'd love to hear you talk a bit about the chapter in your book, When the Team You Need Doesn't Exist. Tell us, tell us about what you should do in that case.
Yeah. So this case really pushes the edge of what can be considered a team. And I absolutely love this chapter. It's written by my wonderful colleague, Janine Miller, with support. And the whole book is, we support each other in the chapters because we're a team writing a book about teams, which is crazy and meta. So Jan Irene was in Africa and wound up being asked to take leadership on electrifying a rural village. And there was no team. And the way she talks about building an understanding of what success looks like, really slowing down to go fast, really making sure that everybody is clear on the success. And then she has to get people on the team who can't even come to the village, right? Who are at the electrical company, who are at grantees, who are at different places. And she can either treat them as a go get this thing for me, or she can pull them together as a team, even if they don't get to talk to each other directly. And she chose that latter option. And part of that is she led for, I think, a decade or so, complicated software teams at Silicon Graphics when Silicon Graphics was at its height. And so she knows what it takes to build teams, to run things that are complex. And the way she described how she went about doing that at that village in Africa, to me, is generalizable to any complex project that you're doing where you have to go get people's help cross-functionally. So I'm excited that people are going to get to see that chapter.
I'd love to hear a bit about the work about your firm at Altus Growth Partners, and maybe we can bring in some stories of how you have worked with teams, diagnosed some issue, and help them get better. Sanitized, of course, but tell us a little bit
Yes.
about tell us a bit about Altus Growth Partners.
Sure, sure. So um, this I'll share this story because it may be similar for many of your listeners. I have been an independent consultant for 24 years.
What?
I
Holy
started,
smokes!
yeah, I know.
You
I
were
started my career.
early on this. Wow, 24 years.
Yeah, I started my career at Bain and Company, and that was, a great place for a sociology major. It was business boot camp. It was awesome. Got a Stanford MBA. Uh, Met the people almost accidentally at Accenture's healthcare strategy group, fell in love with that group of people. And they are still to this day, some of them are coming to the book launch party. Like, there's my best referral sources and contacts and just people in my life. So all things were going well, fast track to associate partner, but I met the guy I wanted to marry, and I did what Sheryl Sandberg said not to do because I didn't want to be on the road all the time. I wanted to be, at home. And my husband and I had some hard conversations, and he's like, is it going to be like this where like I meet you at Chicago O'Hare every couple of days? I was like, that's crazy.
They
So
have some very
I
nice
said,
lounges. There's nothing wrong with Chicago.
yeah, right. But not a place to have a marriage and family at the lounge at O'Hare. So I was thinking, okay, what could I do where I get to work with really smart people on their hardest problems? And a friend of a friend had told me about executive coaching and said, you'd be a great executive coach. So while I was still at Accenture, I went and did training for that because I figured, oh, that'll help me with my consulting anyway. And when I decided that I wanted to go because I really wanted to get off the road, she called me back out of the blue and she said, I don't know that you'll remember me, but a year ago I told you to become an executive coach. Did you do that? I said, well, actually I did. She said, great, because I've just become head of marketing here at Blue Shield of California, right here in where you live in San Francisco. And I'd like you to come work with me and my team. And it was just at the absolute perfect moment. So that was 24 years ago. Fast forward, so many companies get in contact and say, we want you to be our West Coast regional lead for leadership development or organizational development or whatever. And I said, no, thank you. No, thank you. I'm doing fine on my own. And I very partner up with various things and it's fine. I really love my work. But this particular group of people that we wound up forming Altus out of, we had all done about 10 years ago, a 3-year program in organizational development and organizational coaching with a fellow named Bob Dunham out of Institute for Generative Leadership. And Bob was a great mentor. We loved the program and we thought each other was absolutely the bomb. So when Koba got the idea of, hey, let's put this together, I said yes. So I still have my Idea Shape business, but I do most of my work with Altus. And here's the interesting part that relates to teams is we had all been individual practitioners and we had habits of playing solo. So now we're on a team and we're working together with clients as a team. We're talking with them about potential opportunities and how we could support their business. And we're used to, oh, I'll just do the doc myself. Oh, I'll just do this myself. Oh, I'll design it. You can design Tuesday, I'll design Wednesday. And we actually had to become a team and we had to have a commitment to coordinate. And that process we write about in the last chapter of the book. And it has been such an absolute delight. And now I don't want to go back. I want to do this as a team.
That's very cool. Tell me about the typical engagement that your firm runs.
Yeah, so there's a few different sorts. We do a lot of exec team work, and for me, and this is true probably going back a dozen years, that much of my work happens when there is a big change to the business, whether it's an acquisition or very commonly a new CEO, either stepping up from the organization or coming in from outside. And it's a great opportunity to restructure how the executive team is working, set new guidance for the organization. Usually there's new strategy and they need a culture that's going to make sense with a new strategy. So the practical work looks like working with the executive team as their coach, often working directly with the CEO, making sure that other people on the team have coaches because it's not easy to learn how to lead in a new way. As we discovered, it's taken us, we're in year 6 of transforming from solo practitioners to a team at Altus Growth Partners. So it's not going to be easy for an SVP of engineering to make some changes overnight in how they partner and share information, all that. So we do that. We also do things like installing OKRs and doing it in a way that really helps the business move together. Working on decision-making processes has been absolutely huge for our clients, and helping people get on track with a really simple model that makes it very clear who's going to make which decisions. And of course, the model is different depending on the companies, but just having a decision-making model enables scaling in a way that is really, really powerful. We do work around culture. We do work around building teams at the top at a variety of levels, key initiatives, et cetera. So it's really about where very bright people with very big promises that they've made to the world are working together and figuring out how to get results.
Could you walk me through a case example in sanitized where your firm has worked with an executive team, and what were some of the things that you encountered? Maybe what was the inciting incident that they brought you in, and what sorts of interventions or coaching or advice did you give them, and what was the impact?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So with a client that's, I'll just say a healthcare organization, about 1,200 people, and there's a new CEO coming in. And he saw that the team, while it had great people, and he kept most of the people on the team, and they were great people, but they weren't running the company together in a way that he saw that they could. And so I first worked with him on coming up with his new sort of rules of the road and really being able to articulate how he wanted this organization, especially his senior team, to operate. Then I worked with the senior team as their team coach, and I would come to their team meetings and help them see where they were on pattern for the new way of doing things and where they weren't there yet. And then work individually in spot coaching with some of the team members to get them there. Some of the team members also had individual coaches to help them lead in a much faster pace organization than they had been used to. Some of them had been with the organization for 25 years and they were fabulous, but they weren't used to the pace of decision making that this new CEO was putting into place. So we had coaching for that. And then I did cohorts. I did 3 cohorts of kind of junior vice presidents and senior vice presidents where they were learners over 8 sessions each and just learn, great people, many of whom had fabulous leadership experience, but they didn't have common language and common models for how they were going to lead together. So we worked together on leading change. We worked together on how do you make a good request? How do you give feedback in a way that's likely to be heard? And most importantly, and this is why I love doing leadership development with senior leaders as a cohort, they built their connections across the organization because the organization had grown through mergers, as so many have, and there was still a lot of us and them. So for them to be partnered together on leadership development was really, really important. So they were able to make the changes that they wanted to make in the company and create more value for their customers, for their investors. And their assessment was that would not have happened if we hadn't taken some of the steps we did.
I see. How did you coach someone? You mentioned about you need to help coach them for faster decision making. How do you get someone, with the skills or the comfort level for that higher pace?
Yeah. So this is where rigor in a model really helps. And also, a huge topic, and we did a chapter to it on trust in teams. There's a saying in organizational development, low trust, slow change. Because if people are doing something new, and especially if they're making decisions at a higher velocity, they need to have trusting relationships with other people because it's scary to do things that are new. Like we haven't tried that before. We haven't gone after that market. We don't want to look embarrassed. We don't want to look like we just let down the company in this way, or we didn't have the skills for it or whatever. So we have to believe that our partners in this, or the people leading us, are being honest with us, have our back, have respect, are going to talk with us when there's issues going on, right? So building up trust is critical for decision making. And the place to start is always with yourself. Where am I worthy of trust? And where are the edges where I am losing trust with other people? And, pretty much everybody sees themselves as a good person. Great. It's fabulous. But are you a good person who's actually not communicating enough? And so people find out from other departments that you've made a big change in your own department, right? So absolutely critical to build trust to increase decision velocity, and then having some clear, simple models and language, like who has the D, right? Out of Bain, right? Where I started all that long time ago. Who has the D? Who gets to make the decision on this? And what input do they have? And then how does it get communicated out?
Can you tell me about another chapter in the book that says, our CEO is blocking team success and I'm the CEO? tell us about that chapter.
That was written by, a few of the chapters are written by our dear friends and colleagues who are not part of Altus, but who we enjoy very much, and came out of that same group of people. And Andrea Bortenka, CEO of 2 companies at the time. Now she's back with one. One is the company she took over from her father, which is a medical equipment company, and another is actually the Institute for Generative Leadership that I mentioned. And when she took over the equipment company, she thought she had to like make decisions. Like we've got this image about what a CEO is. And for her, it was also wound up with what the image was of her father. And we see this so much in family businesses that we work with, because we work with a variety of large family businesses as well as like PE, venture backed public companies. Anyway, so she's got this image of making decisions and like scrambling to learn things really, really fast and then saying, here's what you should do, here's what you should do. And it just bombed, right? Because there were so many people in the company who actually knew how you do things. And what she discovered is her job is to make sure that everybody's on the same page as to the promise, where they're going, what their part of the promise is, what they're accountable for, and making sure that the questions get to the right people who are having the right conversations. But pretending is such a common CEO trap, to pretend you know more than you know, instead of saying, that's a great question. We actually have to design that. Let's see, who should we have in the room when we design that?
Yes, delegating. Get,
Delegating, but also, yeah, getting people on a path to a common promise and not pretending that we've already designed and know things that we haven't designed yet.
Amazing. Pam, for listeners who want to find out more about your firm, we will include a link to the book in the show notes. What other links should people check out?
Yeah, those are great. The book and our website, altusgrowth.com, is perfect. And I am glad to connect with any of your listeners on LinkedIn. Please put in your note that you know me through the Unleash or Unbricks podcast, because I think we all get inundated with, I think now there's word AI generated like spammy sort of requests, but I'm very glad to connect with your listeners on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Well, we will include those links in the show notes, and do not use your chatbot to write a connection request to Pam. Pam, thanks so much for being on the show, talking about your new book about teams. And the book again is Growing Groups into Teams, Real Life Stories of People Who Get Results and Thrive Together. Fantastic. It was so great speaking with you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.